I'm going to hit record so I don't forget because that always sucks. Actually, pause. All right, well, let's kick this thing off. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm here in Zoomland with Kym Ali, owner of Kym Ali Consulting. Kym's career and passion revolves around empowering oil and energy leaders to create inclusive workplace cultures to leverage innovation and increase revenue. Kym is also a DEI consultant, speaker, media personality, which she's got a great personality already. So I believe that. And for those who aren't aware, she's a CrossFit enthusiast. Kym, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today?
Hey, Justin. First of all, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you could make it. And I was going to start off with talking about your CrossFit career, which we can get into. But for the listeners out there, she's made an interesting request. This is the first one. She said, I'm actually more comfortable with the camera off. And I say that to say, with someone who does public speaking and you're very much out there, it surprises me because one of the first interactions or engagements we had was, again, on LinkedIn, just like everyone else connects professionally nowadays, is I sent you a message and on a direct message, say, hey, like, I like your profile, I like your initiatives, would love to have you on the podcast. And instead of responding via like messaging, you actually sent me a video, but now you don't want to be on video. So I'm like what, like, can you please just give me some context behind this?
Right. I know it's weird, right? But you know what? So I used to have a media coach. And so when we would
Okay.
practice or rehearse my speaking engagements, she would always turn her camera off. And I
Wow.
found that, because when you're looking at someone, you have to focus, okay, am I looking at the camera right? How
Yeah.
do I look? Do I sound okay? But for podcasts that are just audio, I find that I'm more engaged and I can focus better if the camera is off.
Interesting. Okay. I find myself when the video's on, I'm looking at myself when I speak. Is that weird?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know what? Whatever works for you. But I noticed the difference between having the camera on and camera off. Like I actually went back and listened to
Wow.
some podcasts that I did when I had my camera off. And, just my tone and intonation was totally different. And I guess it's because I didn't have so many distractions like the camera.
Right. Interesting. No, I'm super fascinated, right? Like everyone has their way of doing things, and perhaps there's some validity there, which I assume there is because you're experienced in doing media stuff. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting to talk about. Next, your CrossFit career. Are you on a relentless pursuit to get to the games, or like where are we at right
You know what? When I started CrossFit back in, 2014, yes, that was the ultimate goal.
now? Yeah.
Now, after a couple of injuries, I'm just happy with going to the gym every day.
Yes. So interesting fact, fun fact about that. I was, grew up playing sports, always in the gym, typical, 20, 30-year-old, in the gym, bodybuilding style workouts. My wife and our neighbor start doing CrossFit. They love it. This was like, it's kind of same thing, like maybe 2016. And she's like, she was bugging me for so long, come to do a Saturday group workout, come to do a Saturday. Finally, I went and they were playing like I rolled up to the gym. Of course, the doors are open. They were playing some club banger. I think it was like Chief Keef or something. And at the time, it was a hot song. And I was like, this is, and everyone's working out, shirts off. I'm like, okay, like I can get down with this. And yeah, and then ever since I've been hooked, and I'm actually part owner in KTX Fit, which we didn't renew our affiliate this year for a number of different reasons. We don't need to go down that road, but for a long time it was a CrossFit gym, and we still do CrossFit style workouts. And we actually had a lady go to regionals this year, is the other owner's wife. And so I'm very much in the CrossFit community, not as much as I used to. Same thing. I used to compete, try to get the games. Wasn't happening once I realized I had to quit my job and basically only work
Right.
out. But anyway, I just think that's really neat. And so last question on that, what's your either favorite workout or favorite movement? I mean, there's got to be something.
Yeah. So, favorite workout, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I love Murph.
Yeah.
Um,
What a classic. I love it. Yes. What's
yeah,
your best
especially,
time?
oh gosh, when I was in tip top shape, which was pre pandemic, I would probably say I can do Murph RX probably like 50, 55 minutes.
What are, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming with a vest.
Well, no vest.
Okay. But
Yeah.
no, seriously though, if you're doing it like either way, and so for those who are listening, are like, what are you talking about, Murph? And fit? it's a workout. It's a classic CrossFit workout, and it's a benchmark, which a lot of the workouts are. And anything under an hour, unless you're like doing scale, is very impressive. So Kym's a beast, and don't mess with her. If you're up in Washington, you see her, do not mess with Kym. She may squat or thrust you off this earth. So anyway, enough about that. But again, we connected on LinkedIn. I was super interested in sort of what you're doing from a career perspective. But before we get into that specifically, I want to ask you, do you have any core beliefs that you've changed your mind on over the last few years? And that can be related to DEI or energy or oil and gas, or just really anything that comes to mind. Because there's been so much change, whether it be with energy, our world, the economy. Does anything kind of come to mind that has made you kind of repivot or reevaluate some core beliefs that you have had in the past?
Well, it's funny you asked me that because D&I is not my wheelhouse. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 17 years, so I'm fairly
Ah,
new to the D&I space. However, through my own personal experiences in corporate America, I've truly learned how powerful DE&I is. And when done correctly, it can truly transform an organization. And so when we look at the current state of energy and how there's a imperative to transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy,
mhm.
it's critical that leaders in the energy sector really, hone in and leverage, a diverse talent pipeline so that way we can meet that 2050 goal.
Right. No, that's so true. And that's one thing that is, so I guess, well, before I ask my next question, then, like, what made you fall into speaking? Is obviously being a registered nurse, or being in, the medical field, and then kind of transitioning into that. Like, there must have been a moment, or you must have had someone that you're close to experience something. I mean, walk us through kind of your journey of going from nurse to now being this big a big part of your life, because it's kind of, it's not just at random, right? I'm sure there's a reason.
Right, right. No, there's some history behind it. So I actually had two profound experiences. So the first one, I was hired as a consultant to go overseas. So I was in a country called Qatar. It's in the Middle East, and they actually are
Yeah.
huge producers of oil and petroleum. And I was hired to open up a hospital. And so in the Middle East, the religion is Islam. And one of the hospital's goals was to have a healthcare facility that provided Western medicine while still maintaining religious and cultural aspects. And
Wow.
so myself and quite a few other consultants were hired to help support their vision. And this was my first experience with implementing DE&I into an organization. And Justin, the results were miraculous because we were able to infuse DE&I not only into organizational policies, but it was embedded in employee policies and in patient care standards. And so at the end of the year, it took us about a year and a half to get it right. We missed the mark the first couple of months. But, after going back and doing focus groups and getting feedback from employees and patients, within a year and a half, when we went back to measure the results, we were able to save the hospital $2.3 million in turnover costs because no one resigned. And the reason why no one resigned is because the employees felt seen and heard, and there was succession planning. So that way people had a ladder to move up into leadership positions. And when we talk
Wow.
about patient care, we were able to reduce gestational diabetes by 63% because we listened to the patients. And, we learned that, providing a male provider for a Muslim woman maybe isn't the best idea. Women in
Yeah.
that region want female positions. And so those simple changes had a huge impact on the organization. But that's what happens when DE&I is done right. So that was my first experience, right?
Yeah.
So I stayed at that facility for about 3 years, and I just felt like it was time to move on. The mission was achieved. So I stayed in the region, but I took a job doing more consulting. And unfortunately, this situation wasn't favorable. People talk about belonging and inclusion. And unfortunately, I know what that feels like, because in this new role, I was fired. To be honest with you, I lost my job due to systemic racism.
Wow.
And, it was a couple of months of just, exclusion and accusations. And, people don't realize that when employees do not feel as if they are part of an organization, it has an impact on their performance. It has an impact on their health. I mean, towards the end, I couldn't sleep. I was having anxiety when I went to
Mm.
work. I couldn't focus or concentrate in meetings. So long story short, unfortunately, lost my job, had to come back to the States. So this was, I would say, at the end of 2019. So
Okay.
3, 4 months later, the pandemic hit, right? And then I think maybe 3 months into the pandemic was the murder of George Floyd.
Mm.
And so you slowly started to see people come forward about their stories about microaggression or racism in the workplace. And I said, wait a minute, you mean to say this is common? Like, this is happening to more people than just me?
Mm.
Why isn't anyone speaking up or saying anything? So I had a chance to share my story with a small media company, and it went viral. I mean, Justin,
Wow.
I had maybe hundreds of people DMing me saying, oh my God, me too. I lost my home because I couldn't afford to pay the mortgage because I was terminated.
Mm.
I'm in therapy because of a toxic work environment. Even to the point where people had attempted suicide because of toxic workplaces.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable the way people are suffering and silent in the workplace. And so at that point, I knew that, okay, even though my situation was very unfortunate, but I was placed in that position to advocate for others that don't have the strength or courage, and to help organizations build inclusive and healthy work cultures so that way everyone can thrive. This isn't a race thing, this is a people thing.
Mm.
And so that's how I got into DE&I.
Wow, that is a very powerful story. And it's interesting because, like during the time you were experiencing that over in I always say Qatar, but when you were, going through that experience and ended up getting laid off and having those issues at the time, you were probably, I mean, you probably didn't realize it was happening for you, not
Yes.
necessarily to you, in a way that now you're able to make like super impactful change. And it's interesting because, so a little quick story to kind of supplement and add to that. My wife and I we're from Canada, and in oil and gas up there, it's very diverse. Canada is very diverse. There's a lot of inclusivity, and so it was something that until we moved down here into Texas, there was just a different, it was a different vibe and a different energy and sort of a different culture. And so she got hired on with a company, and she has has a finance background, did really well. Well, there was times where people would say, oh, just like, she would do her job, do it well, and she'd be like, hey, like, I want to take on more work. And they'd say, oh, don't worry, just sit there and look pretty. And she was like, wait, what? Like, this is
Yeah.
unusual. And then she would deliver, whether it be a presentation or speak with people, and they would be impressed. But then people who were performing weren't quite performing as well as she was, were getting promoted above her, and then she was having to train people above her. And she was like, what? And yeah, so she experienced that coming down in here, and it happens everywhere. I'm not just like excluding Houston by any means, but I got to witness that kind of at arm's length through my wife, and I was like, wow, this is very, like, this is real. And she ultimately ended up quitting because, yeah, she'd come home, she was miserable,
Yeah.
and this and that. And interesting, she had another experience, not too long ago. It was after actually the George Floyd incident, and we had some friends in Canada reach out, and they wanted to do an Instagram live to get, because we're a mixed couple, and they're like, hey, like, we'd love to get your take on your experience down there, with everything happening. And we did it, and one of the ladies, I'll never forget, she was, after we were done, they were like, wow, like, this, like, your perspective is amazing. And then she was like, yeah, Nicole, like, you just speak really well, like, almost like she was surprised. And it just, and again, like, that for her was like, Wow. And but the intent was like she was impressed, but it was almost like, well, because of the way I look, am I not supposed to speak well? Like it was very odd,
Yeah.
right? So again, I understand what you're saying, and I just think, especially in oil and gas, um, I'm in the drilling and operations world, and we have folks that go into the field in a predominantly, male, white male environment. And because of maybe perhaps a language barrier, or they may not, be happy with the way the individual looks on location, they make it tough for that person. And then they somehow find a reason to say, well, he's not performing very well. And it's like, well, no, actually he's performing better than most of the guys that are in the field. Like, there's obviously something happening here. And so I think it's extremely commendable that, like, someone like yourself, to experience what you did and then come and say, no, I want to make change. And so I think that's great. And so talking, in more on the energy side, because obviously you do stuff with oil and gas companies, but you do it with energy companies. Can you speak a little bit on, um, like, in looking at your LinkedIn, it talks about like how, and you gave the example with the hospital of some of the data, but have you had any real life examples on the energy side, working with different companies on how implementing a sound strategy actually improved, whether it was their financial health, whether it was their turnover? Like, do you have any experience on that side, or is that still something you're working on? Because it's obviously 2019 hasn't been that long, right?
Right, right. No, to this extent, the only work that I've done with energy sector is more training, workshops, things of that nature. To implement a DE&I strategy and to get those type of results, it's a
Mm.
process. It could take a year, 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah. And so why, and again, you may have answered, but like, why energy? Like, what interests you most about the energy sector? Or, and perhaps you do with other industries, but looking again at your profile, it seems to be a focus on the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, so the oil and gas industry is hungry. Number one, there is the 2050 mandate, right, to transition to renewable energy.
Mm.
And the industry realizes that, one of the critical ways to meet that goal is to leverage diversity because this is a global initiative, right? We're not just talking about Texas or the United States. And so, if we are going to make global change, we have to leverage a diverse talent pipeline. And so, the intent is to have the energy industry reflect the diverse demographics of the world. Not only that, a lot of the individuals in leadership positions now are going to be retiring.
Yeah.
And so we need people to step in those leadership positions that have the experience, that can leverage diversity. So that way we can come up with innovative technology, right? Because this
Hmm.
is a global crisis.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because, you look at, in order for us to achieve these goals, and whether it's, the energy transition or whatever goals that are set out by an organization, the more diverse your talent pool is, or the more people you can pull from for your talent pool, really just increases your ability to achieve these goals. Because if you're only working with a select group of individuals, then you may not be tapping into some crazy talent. Maybe not, like, maybe it be globally, maybe it be even locally. But if, and that's kind of, the mission for the podcast, is to make or have conversations around, like, there's a lot of talent in the world, but not the entire world doesn't necessarily have access to power or energy to fuel their hospitals, to fuel, you know, cooking, and giving people the right environment to thrive. Because there's a lot of people out there just trying to survive, let
Yeah.
alone talk about, oh, we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is obviously important. I actually spoke with a gentleman yesterday. He's from South Sudan, and he lives here in Beaumont, Texas, which is just east of Houston. And he even said, he said, it's tough because when listening to this energy transition, he's like, from someone who comes from, an area where we barely have anything, it feels like we're being punished, by
Mhm.
not using oil and gas. Like, replacing oil and gas feels like we're being punished because we need cheap access to energy, so that our people can thrive. And so he's here on like a major mission to help with those initiatives. But you're right. It's like the diversity of talent. It's like if you want to solve problems, the more people that you can get involved to help solve those problems is ultimately going to allow you to achieve those objectives. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I had the opportunity to go to Ghana, I believe, back in
Oh, nice.
2012. And when we talk about access to energy in developing countries, that is a luxury that we take for granted here. So when I was there, the government actually turns off the power for about 4 to 6 hours every day just to
Wow.
conserve on the energy. Yeah, so there are periods where there's no power. Mind you, I went in the summer when it was blazing hot.
Wow.
So that was a harsh reality, but yeah. And so we need to consider that and take that into consideration when we are talking about transitioning to renewable energy.
Big time. So what for you, what do you think the biggest challenge is with, say, your mission?
You know, there's this hesitation around diversity, and I think it's because most people tend to think that they're going to be losing something
Mm,
or they're going to be, forced to associate with people they might not have in their personal network, right? And so that's a huge barrier. But part of my mission is education, getting people to understand that, hey, by diversifying your workforce, you're going to be gaining. Not only are you gaining professionally, but personally, because we all have unique life experiences, education, skill sets, right? But when we come together collaboratively and pull our resources together, we can create something that's better than in a homogeneous society.
right.
A
No, that,
homogeneous society, yeah.
yeah. No, that's, and actually, I should have basically started with this question. So I'm kind of kicking myself, but uh, the way people define diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of varies. So I'd be interested to hear if someone came up to you and said, well, how would you define DEI? Can you kind of help, like maybe uh help with some of the confusion around it? Because there's some misconceptions there, right?
Yes, there are a lot of misconceptions. Yeah, so in layman's term, I would say DE&I is simply, representation, having people not only from various races, but various genders, age groups, sexual orientations, religions, and ethnicities, and combining individuals together, and everyone can showcase their talents, their knowledge, and you can use those skills to create something that's better. So whether it be a product or service for your organization, because people forget that when you are an organization, you are serving the public, and the public is diverse. It's not just one group of people. And so it's imperative to have insight from everyone. So that way, not only are you serving your employees, but you are serving the community as well.
Yes, no kidding. That's a great response. I think it it helps alleviate a lot of confusion. And so, what are some of the misconceptions, or what's like if you see people, because there's always haters out there, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
this this initiative, it's just a bunch of PR, whatever, right? I'm sure you see it all, but what would you say is the biggest misconception, and how do you, like, with kindness and empathy, try to reach those people to, like, perhaps educate or inform them to think of things a little differently?
Right. The biggest misconception is that one, it's a waste of time and money and that it doesn't work.
Hmm.
And so I would challenge people to look at the data. I mean, case in point, what we were able to do at the hospital. And at this point, organizations cannot afford not to invest in DE&I, especially when we're talking about the energy industry, right? Look at climate change, look at the weather, the earthquakes, look at oil prices, right? Gas prices are through the roof, record high. Look at health wise. I mean, there's numerous studies. I'm going to put my nursing hat on now,
Yeah.
but there are numerous studies that say that air pollution, contributes to asthma and even cancer.
Mm,
And so, in order to change the world, we have to leverage the diverse talent that is out there. And
yes.
if you're uncomfortable or you're afraid, just look at the numbers. Look at the money that you will be saving. Look at how you will increase employee engagement and retention. Look at how you will make an impact, not just in your country, but globally around the world. And so I challenge people just to do research, and, you know, um, look at it from a different lens, from an unbiased lens.
Yeah, no, that's true. And there's a lot, I mean, and that's another kind of interesting topic is biases, right? Within the workplace or just in general. But can you speak on a little bit on biases and how that kind of plays into all of this?
Absolutely. So unconscious bias is it's unconscious. You might not even be aware that you have certain feelings toward a certain group.
Right.
And it normally stems from how we were raised, what our parents taught us, what we see on the media. And a lot of times groups are misrepresented, via this communication and media route. And so I challenge people to, get to know people that you don't normally associate with. And you will be surprised. Not everyone fits that stereotype.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I mean, I think, and again, in oil and gas, I think we have a lot of biases, which I don't want to call out and our industry, but I mean, I live it and I breathe it every day. And it's just an unfortunate way of doing it. But I've noticed through sort of a younger generation of people getting into our industry, which it's harder and harder to get people in our industry. So we're trying to do our best. But yeah, there's a lot of biases out there, which make it challenging for people to want to even get into the industry. That again is there's a shift happening. However, I think quite easily you can argue that the demand for oil and gas activity is there just based off energy demands. We quite haven't. I mean, fully. We're not in a position to fully replace it anytime in the immediate future. But with that said, like we need talent, and we have a few interns here at our company, and he's a gentleman that's at Texas A&M for petroleum engineering, and their class size is like a third of what it typically like has been historically, and it's over time is getting less and less. And so,
Mhm.
but you even look at the class, and even the classes are not that diverse. Whereas you take other disciplines, whether it's data science or other engineering disciplines, there are there is a level of diversity there. And so I think we still have a ton of work to do, but I think it's conversations like this and companies working like with someone like yourself that is ultimately going to help slowly change and move the needle. So I'm curious, Kym, if companies are out there or there's someone listening, like say from a C-suite executive, can you speak on some of like really like actionable things that you're working on, or how people, if they were to reach out, like how you would kind of get them started down a path of making positive change?
Absolutely. So this is a two-part answer. So the first part is I hear this argument a lot about not being able to locate a qualified, diverse talent pool, right? However, this is the beauty of diversity and inclusion because when you bring people to the table, such as myself, they can give you their perspective of the talent that is available. So, for example, offhand, I know two people that are engineers. One is architectural. Now I know it's different, but however, engineering, there are still some skill sets, transferable skill sets that could
Mm,
be applied to the energy industry. It will require some training, but mentorship is the way to recruit diverse talent. So that's one answer to your question.
yeah.
And then two, also partnering with colleges. There are tons of STEM organizations that are working with young Black, Hispanic, Asian students, right? That would love to get into the energy industry. But if we don't have that connection, you would never know that those people are, out there waving the white flag, hey, pick me. So that's the first part. Next, yes, what am I doing and what are some of the initiatives that I have? And I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked because I love coming into organizations and hosting executive roundtables. And what that looks like is it's a collection of executives, and we all come together and we talk about what are your goals and objectives. Where are you currently in your organization? So, for example, what are the demographics? And then after we look at the demographics of your organization, now where do you want to go? And then we start benchmarking.
Mm.
We develop employee surveys. What is the employee culture? Do people feel seen and heard in your organization? And then from there, we map out a plan. So with the executive roundtable, it's a great place for leaders who are energized and committed and understand that we are in an energy crisis and want to move the needle towards the 2050 goal. And so the way you can get in touch with me, I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's Kym with a Y, Kym Ali. Just simply connect with me and shoot me a message, and I would love to chat with you and see, what your organization is doing to move the needle.
Yeah, no, and what I'll do is I'll put all your links in the show notes. That way people can just scroll down and click, whether it be your LinkedIn profile, your website, and yeah, just any links that you could even share if there's other spaces or any social directories that you have. Definitely send them to me to where I can include them. And yeah, I encourage everyone out there, even just even if you're not in the position necessarily to deploy or initiate a DEI program within your organization, connect with Kym and learn, because again, you're super active on LinkedIn, and I think it's just through educating and using these social media platforms as underpriced attention to get in front of people. And it's a conversation I have. It's funny because I'm very big on building a reputation online, building your brand, speaking, having a voice, but ultimately through social media, I mean, these platforms are free. And yes, you could do targeted ads if you want to, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to get a message out there or connect with people who align with you and your values, like now is a better chance than ever. And so I'm curious, Kym, on that sort of to touch on that topic. How has social media or LinkedIn, like how have you been able to leverage that to help you reach your goals?
Justin, LinkedIn is my main lead generator. I love LinkedIn. Like you said, it's free. Hopefully, they won't start charging soon.
That's great.
But, it's a great way to not only connect with people in your industry, but outside of your industry. And, branding is everything. If you have the right messaging and you are clear on who you want to serve, LinkedIn is a powerful tool to use, not just for entrepreneurs, but for businesses as well, because businesses have a brand reputation that they want to, either build or enhance. And so that's another way for companies to leverage LinkedIn. If you are trying to recruit a diverse talent pipeline, are you signaling that in your messaging, right? And so
Yeah.
you can really get creative with it.
Yeah, you can. And so I have to ask, are you on TikTok?
Really?
Because if you're not, you're missing out.
Everyone
Yes.
says that.
TikTok and LinkedIn has the most organic reach that you can possibly get right now. So TikTok is still gaining a bunch of momentum. So Shell, the energy company Shell, they actually are hiring a TikTok manager because they want to be the leading content creator on TikTok. That is their goal. And
Oh, wow.
with how much, like, where it used to be obviously like, and again, there's a lot of like comedy, a lot of like, dance trend videos and stuff like that. But the rate at which people from their late 20s to early 40s are on TikTok, it's like absurd. And so I encourage you, as someone who like I really keep my finger on the pulse of where the attention is. And I'm telling you, TikTok, LinkedIn, you will be blown away. Like you could post something and get 3,000 views and only have like one follower, and then it'll just exponentially grow from there. So I encourage you to at least play with it. Because again, I think you'd be very surprised in a good way.
Okay, because you're like the 100th person that has told me to get on TikTok. So I am going to
Yeah.
follow your advice.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I'm curious, and if you start, and just even one a day, just a quick, and it doesn't even have to be on DI. It could just be like, hey, this is Kym hitting a CrossFit workout and I'm going to go crush my goals for the rest of the day. Like, it doesn't always have to be like super polished, but what I'm finding is as I've played around with it, it's insane. But anyway, I'm curious in 6 months, I'll be like, hey, Kym, how's your TikTok going? And you'll be like, yeah, my business is like growing 10x. I can't believe it. So
Oh,
you're
wow.
welcome. But one last question I do have, and it's again more of a personal question to kind of wrap things up. But do you have any daily habits or routines that contribute to your success?
I do. I do. So first thing in the morning is mindset morning.
Cool.
And I don't check email. I don't check social media because I tend to find that sets the tone for today, for the day, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so first thing in the morning, I love my coffee, have to have my coffee, and just kind of meditate, think about my day. What are my goals? How do I, want to end the day? So I do that for about 30 minutes and
Good for
then I
you.
get into, emails or anything else that needs to be done. But yeah, mindset mornings, that's has been transformational for my business.
I love it. Well, that can be your first post on TikTok, is talking about your mindset mornings, because I think that's a lot of people could use that, a little bit of juice to get them going. Well, Kim, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really hope we can continue to build on what we've talked about today. I wish you nothing but the best. I'll do everything I can to help promote what you and you're doing. And anyone out there that's listening, please, at the very least, connect with Kym, say hello, tell her you heard us on Wicked Energy with JG, and let's just keep growing. Kym, any closing last words that you'd like to relay to the audience today?
Absolutely. I know DEI is a Herculean task for any organization, but the hardest part is just to get going, right? After you get going, you get traction, you start to see the results. The rest is easy.
Yes, that's so true. Well, again, for everyone, thank you so much for the support. I know this is, I'm still early on in my career with my new podcast, but anything you can do to support me, that'd be great. Review, like, share, hit me up if there's something you like, you don't like. I'm open to all criticism, whether it's good or bad. And with that said, always remember, everyone deserves access to energy, and we is greater than me. Thanks, everybody.